Louis Theroux did a documentary about the Manosphere. Now, that documentary was basically, in my opinion, focused on the wrong people. But let me make this clear. Manosphere is not something that I'm a part of or anything in relation to associating myself with any group. Content that, I do in terms of a few of the content, that I will choose to make is in relation to what I'm seeing that I'm not a fan of. Or I'm a fan of, and then I'll expand on the things I'm seeing online and the mentalities and the perspectives, around, for example, dating. So I'm gonna make that clear. But Louis Theroux, like I said earlier, done a documentary on the Manosphere, and he picked people that were popular names to try and make sense of this Manosphere and the conversation that's around it. The radicalized versions of people are what that program or that documentary focused on. People who are not really the people who really started the Manosphere many years ago, in terms of the intention of it and what they wanted to try and get across when it came to the dynamics between men and women. There were no forms of real radicalized versions of it. And that documentary highlights some of the people that have become popular online and with groups that start or movements. Generally, you will see sometimes, a lot of the time, there are people who are a little bit extreme whenever something takes place. So let me make that very clear. That documentary, I believe, focused on that. And that was a choice to do that. Now, that doesn't take away any form of responsibility from certain people in terms of the way they come across. I've got a clip of a woman online who has her opinion on the Manosphere documentary and just how things have changed over the years in terms of the dynamics of men are and women are, and how things have moved forward when it comes to certain conversations and the issue that she feels that is, online at the moment. She had two parts. I've only gone to part two. The first part is summarizing more or less, and expanding on her points. And then the second part is obviously finishing her points. But I thought the second part made more sense for me to dissect. I'm going to dissect it. I'm going to give my opinion. And then also I'm just going to give my general view on why the Manosphere has been in the making or was in the making for decades, but it's come to a head online, and it's come to something where it became a louder sort of perspective online. Lack of focus on certain groups, you could say certain men, has enabled this to be a thing. In terms of the dynamics between men and women, particularly, I'm going to focus more on the dating and the relational, capabilities and things of that nature between men and women.
For 200,000 years, being a provider, being someone of high value, that meant something communal, that meant something intellectual, that meant something physical and real. And you fed people, you showed up, you built things. And now the architecture of human incentives has completely collapsed because we've rebuilt ourselves around this new question, which is not what I can contribute to the world, but what can I make the algorithm reward? When your entire sense of purpose and identity and survival is being mediated through a screen, you don't just need to be a provider anymore. You need to be a provocateur. We traded village elders for Manosphere podcasters, and we traded community for content.
I think we didn't trade per se people from yesteryear, men from yesteryear who were, as you said, people who provided. I don't think we've traded that. I think men, especially as the modern world has changed in how we provide, we don't need to go and search for food and, hunt for food. We now obviously have a different way of being able to live, right? But I think back in the day, in reference to her point, we used to look at men in a certain way to know that men do this and women do that. There were roles, basically. I think we understood it more so back in the day. And women were understanding of the importance of their roles. There was no, in my opinion, any kind of conflict between them. It was understood that men provide, protect, and women generally man the environment, the home. And it was accepted. Roles, for me, are important. Now, it can change if you're in a relationship where interchangeably you do different things at different moments. You share loads and stuff like that. But men and women back in the day, I believe, understood their positions more so than today. I believe there's been a change with women dramatically in terms of how they perceive their roles or how they perceive themselves in the world and what they believe they can do and why they don't want to be secluded in a certain limited role, for example, between men and women. And I think that's where things have changed. I think generally men know they have to provide things, they have to be a certain way, and that is still going on. They have to bring things to the table that are indicative of protection and provision for a family. But I think women today, there has been a change generally from what we're hearing online and what I'm seeing online. Her point about the trade-off and how things have changed, I thought I'd just make that point because I don't believe it's completely the case. But let's hear what else she has to say in relation to her beliefs.
And we called all of this progress. And here's where it stops being so abstract. We have a sitting president, a documented perpetrator of SA, who has literally said on tape that he believes that he's entitled to women and their bodies. And a significant portion of the population heard all of this and was like, yes, I'll take that. He is the full resolution image of what the Manosphere is now selling in like low definition. And it's power without accountability. It is dominance without consequence. This isn't a political opinion. This is a symptom. When the most extreme versions of online ideologies becomes electable, that ideology then leaves the internet and it enters our institutions and systems. Louis Theroux's Manosphere documentary did not end with like some tidy conclusion because there actually isn't one. The Manosphere is not the cause of any of this. It is the result. It's what the dial looks like when a generation has been failed by real structures, by absent fathers, by broken economies and hollowed out communities. And they went looking for meaning online and found that the most profitable thing, the thing that rewarded them the most, was that they could sell a performance of the real thing that they were so desperate to feel, which is powerful and chosen and seen.
The thing she mentioned earlier in her point about having the ability to just, in a way, do what you want without any kind of consequence. So men, she mentioned Trump, are in position, have been documented as being, as she mentioned, a person, that is an SA person, right? A person that has done that. Now, that is not something in relation to the Manosphere in terms of its start and what the Manosphere was about and the intention of it. Again, that documentary is people that they went to who had a larger audience and had the ability to spew what they spewed and got a following from it. But the initial, let me make it clear, the initial moments of the Manosphere and what it was and the intention was only literally to give understanding about men and women, understand how men should be generally from a productive standpoint, from a leading standpoint, being able to find your purpose and find a woman that is indicative of being in a relationship to further improve the both of you. Knowing how you have to be, knowing how you don't lead with money, knowing how you don't lead untoward in any way, knowing what's important. These were some of the things that the Manosphere many years ago were trying to do, trying to get some form of understanding between men and women in the right way and how to get men to start getting the things they would want. Now, men like Trump or men in general who could be viewed as people that just do what they want, those men have always had a market for women. Yes, they've always had a market. Those are considered bad boys. Whether we agree or whether the point of men doing what they want or having this kind of, the manosphere is having this kind of lack of accountability, power without accountability, those types of men have a market for women. They've always had for decades. There's never been something that is not the case. From childhood, you go from school days, you go and see the types of boys, not all, but some of the boys that got some of the girls. I witnessed this with my own eyes. And that's not to say other types didn't get the, sort of response, the positive response from women or from girls at the time in school. But you go from school to college, check the types of girls and guys and the responses you will get. Those types who were considered like a trump, for some strange reason, women or girls were receptive to them. Not under duress a lot of the time, not under duress, but just by what they liked. So what we're seeing from the side of the manosphere that shouldn't be associated with it, like the ones that were in that documentary, if you watched it, with Louis Theroux, those kind of guys are considered to have personality. They're considered to have the things that some women want. And those kind of guys don't have an issue having an audience from men. And in person, they will still be able to, those types of guys, pull women. So where is the issue when it comes to why they are at this point? There's an issue, I believe, between men and women. I think at times we're both out of order. We're both not in the roles we should be. Men leading their lives accordingly and women doing the same. But when they come together, knowing that both have to be playing a role, one as a helpmeet, in my opinion, and then obviously one as the foundation of a family and foundation of communities. But both have to understand their role. And both have to only be about what's right. But a lot of the time, men like that she said documented, essay, person, those kinds of men have an audience, have a market from women. So it's not like what we're seeing from a Trump is resonated itself in institutions. No, these things have been about before online became big. Certain types of men and certain types of women who accept it. Now, this is not about blame. It's just about to say, if anything, what I'm seeing and what I've always seen in my life, from growing up, London born, going to schools, going to college, seeing the instances in work or whatever, men or young boys and young girls, there's certain things that we have growing up that we're both out of order. The things we like, the things we see, the things we think are cool in different environments. These are the things that shape us. We may have good parents. For example, you may have good parents that try and teach you this, that, do this, don't do this. But when you get out in this world, that's where the influence sometimes can take place. That's not to say you don't get poor influences from parents. You do. But some could be doing what's required to raise their kids right. But when they get out there and the foolishness that's in the world and the nonsense, the things we have been, I would say, fed as well. These are things that resonate from young. What girls start to like from young is a certain type of guy. When guys see that, they feed into it even more. Guys or young boys, little things that we say and think and think is cool and funny. And by the time you know it, girls are gravitating to those types. So this thing has been a thing from childhood. And you have to look at it further than just what we're seeing here. We have to look at who really controls this thing, who really controls what we see, what we hear, what we eat, and see that this is a bigger thing. But the manosphere has been something that has been bubbling up because certain boys, like I've mentioned, who will get the responses in a certain way, favorably from girls from young, certain other guys didn't. So when you see certain people in the manosphere, especially on the quote unquote radical side, they are sometimes self-professed former simps who now see the error of their ways and say, look, we're now going to be doing a different thing. We're now learn from our errors. I was a simp before and now I'm doing such and such. I'm teaching you how to do such and such. So you have to look at it from this perspective also. There's a chance, even when you're a former simp, you still haven't got certain things out of you in terms of how you view women, because there was a chance when you was a simp, you weren't happy with it. You were put in friend zones. You were not given the responses you wanted. So there's a chance when you now come out with content, you might start throwing out certain things that you think are a little bit triggering. Why? Because you still maybe haven't fully got over being a simp. But you're now marauding as if, okay, I've learned. So a lot of the time you're seeing, in my opinion, these things where you're getting people who are on the adding themselves to the Manosphere movement, and they're throwing jabs at women, but also trying to give game in the same instance. So you could say it could be a form of bitterness, but you have to look at it. If you know anything, you have to look at it and say and realize the Manosphere was not in relation to what you're seeing from those guys that were on that documentary. If Louis Theroux really wanted to find out the real information, he would have done so. But there was an angle to focus on this. It's just to put it in perspective and show there's reasons why we're here. There's reasons why the Manosphere has been bubbling up for years. Because there's always been men or young boys who were shut out in certain instances, who didn't have a voice, who didn't have the ability to have favorable moments with young girls when they were young.
I really believe that we are at the extreme end of the pendulum culturally right now. And we're kind of like vibrating in this space of pure monetized vitriol. And here's the thing about pendulums. If you look culturally, historically, they do swing back eventually, okay? And when Louis asked HS in that Manosphere documentary, what about being a good person? We have built a world where a man with millions of followers can't even answer that question without talking about economics. And I think it's indicative that we haven't just lost some of our values, we've liquidated them into capital and we've converted them into content. And we logged on and decided that that was all fine.
You see, what she said and what she said in general, I hear her points, and there's some points that she said that make sense. But what we've seen online is literally, again, the radicalized version, if you want to call it that. The HS that she mentioned, those guys are not the Manosphere. They're not the Manosphere. He mentioned something from an economic standpoint when he was asked, what about being a good person? Those are guys that are getting reactions. Those are reaction content guys. Those are, I'm trying to have a laugh guys. And again, not a defense of Manosphere. I'm not a part of any of these things. I've never needed them. But when it comes to just the whole, mentality, basically, this is something that you have to look at it and think, outside looking in, knowing and seeing early days of it, it was never about what, she was saying in terms of the radicalized version and what Louis Theroux was showing. If he wanted to, he should have went to a lady called Cassie J, who did a documentary called The Red Pill in 2016. That was something that showed the men who didn't have a voice in certain instances, the men's suicide rates, the male deaths at work, the economic standings that have had major issues with men, lack of care in certain instances of men's domestic violence issues, which is something that doesn't get spoken about. So it was all about those things, as well as, for example, that was the men's rights activist movement back in the day. For those kinds of things I've mentioned there. So there was all of these things. And then Manosphere was then given information about certain types of women, certain types of female nature. and what they are generally for and like, and how to get your best option you can get. But you have to be a certain type. You have to get your mind right. You have to be on your purpose. You have to not put women on pedestals, and respect women, but know what is important first and foremost. It was all of these things. It's only when it's gone to these other guys where it's become sensationalized and it's become more noisy. And that's the distinction. And the fact that the Manosphere, I've said, is something that has been in line for decades. If you are a person, a young guy, remember the days in school, in college. Tell me if there weren't Chad and Tyrones being the guys who were getting some of the girls to be interested in them. Then that starts from childhood. It resonates itself all the way to adulthood. Some of the guys who couldn't, the nice guys, what were they called? Nice guys finish last. The terms we associate with. Check all of these things over the years and see why. Also, I've got a video that shows a person who didn't find it easy when he was coming up to try and get women. And again, this is not about getting women. It's just about understanding the opposite sex as a man, but also understanding how things really are. And this is why the Manosphere came, because the nature of what was happening or what happens outside is as such that online had to now become a place for it to happen. Because back in the day, I remember when I was young, so many talk shows that I used to watch that showed men in a disparaging light. Ricky Lake, Jerry Springer, Maury, Jenny Jones I used to watch. These were all things that used to come on 90s, early 2000s. We watched these things. Montel Williams had a show. So these were all moments that I remember. So all of the ways that women have had over the years to be able to speak about their gripes with men, the men that they were picking, by the way, and then on top of that, have men pushed in a disparaging way, painted in a disparaging light, as if that was just indicative of men. Back in the day, if you were of a certain age as well, the whole term player, being a player. Why was a guy a player? Because there was a market for women like that. But there's this notion that men are just speaking about female nature just because. No, it's because there are women who are receptive to those types. And again, I'm not for just being outside and just going for one or two or three. I'm for you doing what you have to do the right way, right? When you're trying to navigate this dating world or navigate the world in general. But there's always been a market for certain types of guys. So, as I said, let me play this clip. It's a clip that you've seen, I'm sure. But I just want to emphasize the mentality of what got us here and why women played a role in it unknowingly. And it made men start changing their ways to be able to see a result. Not saying the Manosphere, what they did, they were the answer. But they came because nobody else has given game in ways where I think they need it. And we as men and women need to get back to our roles, get back to our general foundational reasons as to why we are here. It's for women to be a helpmate, in my opinion, and for men to lead and be a foundation for family if you're willing to get into a relationship. If not, hey, live your single lives. But the issues that we have in the dating world and in the dynamics between men and women is because we are out of our roles. And like I said, we've got to know who is really responsible for changing minds and influencing minds. You've got to look into it. But let's play that clip.
Ross, what do women really want?
I don't care what they want. I only care what they respond to. See, my focus is a little bit different from your other guests. There's what women say they want, there's what women think they want, and then there's what they actually respond to. I'm not an academic, I'm not a theoretician. I'm interested in what works on the street when it's time to date and mate. And what women actually respond to is not what they say they want.
So what do they respond to?
They really respond to a guy who's a challenge, a guy who's a question mark, a guy who keeps them guessing. You see, in the beginning, the less attractive you are physically, the more you have to rely on your attitude. And that's what I wrote my book for. I wrote my book for the average-looking, even ugly guy who goes out there in the real world and tries to be a nice guy, gets his head kicked in.
So no more Mr. Nice Guy.
You can be pleasant. You see, we've got to define our terms. By nice, I mean accommodating. When you accommodate, you get what the commode gets. You get the crapola. You have to learn how to say no to a woman.
What he said is prime example of what takes place. Going from a person who couldn't get, he's made it clear, and this is just one of many that have had to do things like this, hence why the Manosphere came. So there's certain things that made the Manosphere become a thing. It was to, and again, I'm not saying this is indicative of the Manosphere, but the mentality of how to get, how to improve your chances, your standing. I'm not saying about getting into bed with women. That's not the point I'm trying to make. It's just the mentality that men have had to acquire, certain men who have been quieted down over the years. So it gives men the understanding to say, okay, I'm going to have to do some research. I'm going to have to change my ways to see what I can get. And then it comes out in the form of this type of information, how to get into such and such with women. But it just shows you the nature of what men were trying to give. Many years ago, there's always been a reason as to why we're here. And these are some of the reasons. Men having to say, okay, this is the nature of certain women. I need to be able to change it up to be able to get what I want.
Women will never be honest with you about there's something attractive, not about getting beat up, but it's something attractive about an asshole to them. But they won't admit it because Oprah and them, you know, the Mafia tells women how they're supposed to think, but they still don't know why they still attracted to this dude who's not as nice as the guy for Valentine's Day who brought them flowers and chocolate, and they don't know why they hate that dude.
Right.
They want to be with the guy that's home watching the game, and he goes, oh, baby, go out and do your thing. I'm not going out. But I want to go out with you. But the other guy that comes and he's like, well, I'm the guy who loves you. She don't know why she hates that dude.
Yeah.
But all we got to do is be honest and have a conversation about it, as opposed to, you know, the mob telling you how to go against how you feel. That's what this world is right now. It's a bunch of people who want to legislate and control how you feel. Forget what you think and how you act. They don't even want you to feel anything no more. So that's why I'm like I am, man, because I don't like to be told what to do.
Patrice O'Neal, comedian, one of the early guys that used to speak about the dynamics between men and women. He used to speak about the dynamics between men and women. And he made it clear, getting to the end, it's like people are telling you how to feel. Women, there's a thing, not all, but there's a thing about certain women who like certain things. This notion of a certain type of guy who says as he pleases, who does as he pleases. It's this confidence it gives and portrays to women. So men have had to come out and say, look, I see this. This is what you need to start doing. It's like he said at the end, women being told how to feel. Yes, because they know they actually feel things for those kinds of guys. The bad boys, for example. But they're being told, as he said, how to feel. They should just be honest and say, what is your real feelings about what you really feel? There is a reason why there's a market for those guys that you really feel.
They pushed feminism because they said if we can push mothers and women into the workforce and we double the workforce, workers of the world unite. You know what I'm saying? Through the university systems, we can kind of propagandize the young women to be socialists and to be Marxists, because they kind of tend that way anyway. The way that women's brains work is very like communitarian. For a reason, we're moms. So it's very easy to radicalize, and this isn't my opinion. You can just read the writings of these people, and they tell you. All these early 1800s writers were saying we need to get women away from the home and away from being mothers and push them into the workplace, because then we can politicize them, we can motivate them into becoming revolutionaries. Instead of staying home with your kids and doing all these things for your family, for your community, you're doing them for a corporation and are away from your kids all day. Where do they go? They go to public schools, where the public school system then can dictate to them what the values should be, what the worldview should be.
With that, the fact that women were used in a way to be able to fulfill the capitalistic agenda for women to get into the workforce, for women to now chase degrees, for women. And again, do what you have to do if you're a woman and you're happy to be educated. If you're happy, that's good. I'm just saying you have to look further to just the people on the front line who are doing things online. Understand the issues that have taken place from, as they say, the elites. Powers that be, to be able to get us to this point where women, uni, work, they've now jumped into the hustle and bustle culture. It's tiring them out. You see it online now. A lot of women are saying feminism, okay, fine, equality. Yeah, we want that. But we're now tired. We've now seen issues online about being ejected from work. We've seen a lot of outcries about women just saying, you know what, I don't want to be doing this kind of thing that I thought made sense all those years ago, about me doing exactly the things that men are doing in the same intensity that sometimes men are working at. I don't want to do it like that. We're seeing the effects of it, but it was a capitalistic agenda to get women in. And on top of that, what I believe that's also done is this. It's made women now have an extra way to look at things in a negative way, to say, you know what? If I start working and I start doing this and I start doing that, why do I really need a man? The only time I will need a man is if I want maybe, I don't know, just a man to do things for me and to take care of me because I want it. But back in the day, women, when marriage rates were higher, were understanding of their role to say, the man generally is the lead. Let me get with him because I want to be married and I see the importance of it. Now, some people will say, oh, it's because they didn't have any economic standing, so they had to be married. You could say that, but at the same time, they understood the importance of marriage. Irrespective, I believe, irrespective of resources, they understand the importance of marriage. Today, resources have increased for women, and it seems marriage is not that important. And I believe, like I said, it puts things in your head to say, you know what? Why do I need him if he's not on my level? Women never spoke about that. Never said my level. My level insinuates just on an economic level, not on a mental level, spiritual level, not on a equally yoked level, more often than not on a, well, if it is the case, they need to lead with that, but they lead more on my level. You mean have this, have these things, have these superficial things, have this amount of money, have this car. You want that aspect. Women never used to speak from that perspective. That's a prime example of not being in your role. Then men are now thinking, the new Gen Z men, the millennial men, especially what that woman said about the Gen Z men and the influence. Gen Z men are saying, but my boomer age dad was okay being able to do marriage, get a property, get a car at a certain amount. Now, the women who have been influenced from a capitalistic nature are saying, you need to be on my level. Plus, I've got my degree. I've got my decent paying job. You need to do also the romance, also emotionally understanding me in every instance, at every moment, plus provide generally the majority of it, even if woman has more resources, because again, capitalistic nature, they're into work, they're doing their thing in that regard. I still want a man to do all of that. And the women who are saying this, I don't also want to do all of the housework or majority of it, because I'm now considered a slave in my home. It's slavery. That's what some women are saying today. So with that, do you understand why the Manosphere was a thing that was starting to come in? How do you teach all of these things to Gen Z, to millennials, when boomer age men didn't really have to do that? So what information can boomer age men give to Gen Z about how to deal with this new type of thing that has impacted women? You've got to look at the reasons. These are things that have been bubbling up for years. Women have changed and had the alternative to think differently, to say, what else are you bringing? What have you done for me lately? In the 80s, ooh, yeah, ain't nothing going on but the rent. I remember them songs. I remember in cars with my mum, brothers or whatever, driving to places, and them songs were on radio. Me and my young self, I'm feeling the songs because I'm young. I'm feeling the beats and melodies, but that's what it was. It's only when you get older, you're like, oh, I don't want no scrubs. This is how the mentality started changing when you started getting more, when women started getting more, and again, get more. But it changed things to enable the years of quietly men seeing things change to a point where we've got to this point to try and use the manosphere to give game to men. All of these changes has made, I think, us not assert our roles properly, which in turn, manosphere came up as an answer, they believed. Doesn't mean it's the answer, but it came up as an option because nobody was giving game. Again, unknowingly, from a capitalistic nature, to get them into work, which in turn competes with men and enables the jostling of position to take place potentially in a relationship, because now you're saying he has to do such and such and such, such and such and such. But it's like, but generally that's not what the women are supposed to be asking for. They're supposed to be finding the right character, the right person with the right vision. Yes, he should be working. Yes, if you're working, cool. But you're now hitting in different ways you shouldn't be. And that's where the confusion lies with men. It's like, but what's the point? Now, what women am I getting that's better than them women back in the day, or on a par with them? That's not to say everything was good back in the day. No, there were some strong women back in the day with I'm this, I'm that. Yeah, there were. Not everything was all, rosy in the traditional sense. Let's not get that confused. But the point is, they understand still certain roles. That's my point. Masculine mentality of a man was starting to be phased out. That's too much. Let's get appeasing men. And you've seen some of the people or certain men be pushed in a certain way in the mainstream media of the type of man that we're now seeing is considered masculine. I saw a magazine many years ago about the masculine man and how he appeared and how he came across. It was like, that's not the ones I remember growing up on. It's different. That's not my dad who was that masculine in a certain way, or, married man. I've seen all these examples of good men. So when I saw what I'm seeing over the years and some of the portrayals online, particularly negatively, or the programs I said I watched earlier, some of the talk shows that put them in disparaging lights, I'm thinking, but that's not indicative of what I know. But we can get back if we want to by being understanding of what is important on both sides. But I think marriages and the reasons for divorce, you will see a lot of it, irreconcilable differences, finances, and most of the women who initiate divorce are educated. So educated, irreconcilable differences generally, and finances. So obviously divorce for lack of finances. But let's just say you get the ones who are educated and irreconcilable differences. The ones who are educated are saying, look, if I'm not feeling something, I'm off. Irreconcilable differences. And I'm educated. I can dip and start again or get my own place because I'm economically in a position to do so. So now when you see movements like men going their own way, it's not by chance. The changes and the influences that have affected women have changed them in a lot of instances. Again, it's not just that it's their fault. It's just the fact that it's a choice to jump on certain movements when you're not really understanding of it. It's only when it gets to a head, like I believe it's got to today, when you're seeing a lot of women online saying, hey, I'm tired, based on what I thought would give me fulfillment. That's not saying all are like this. Some women are happy going to work, nice. Doing your business, cool. Hustle and bustle nature, cool. But a lot would want the family unit. Good man, kids, simple. And if we stop looking at our roles as minimizing women, because a woman may say she wants to be in the home, a woman may say she wants to be with her kids and do the things that are fulfilling to her. She may say, I'm fulfilled because I'm a wife. And that's all I want. Oh, she's this, she's minimizing herself. Oh, that's what we will say today. Back in the day, that's fine. Because they are in their actual natural state of using their womb and being fulfilled from it and working with their family. Today, oh no, you should be wanting to do this. You should be wanting to do this. You can, but it's nullified now if a woman wants what is actually natural to her. Hence why all of these things came about, to try and make sense of it and give game. Doesn't mean it's been 100% successful, and it doesn't mean these guys who were on the Louis Theroux documentary are the ones to look at, because again, they were the radicalized, attaching themselves to a movement, and they were popular, so they became a voice. It's not indicative of what were the main reasons for this, which was to give game on female nature and men and women dynamics, but it was to find a common ground. But it will be interesting to find out what people think. Like the video. What do you guys think?